Gott ewig dich zu dienen, Gott ewig dich zu dienen. Gott ewig zu dienen, gebt eure Worte und seid mit ihr seid
Hello, everyone. This is Ruben Valenzuela with Bach Collegium San Diego, and we're back with our Pull Up a Chair ongoing series of interviews. Every week, we try to highlight a past BCSD musician, present, special guests. We've even had some staff members on here. It's been a lot of fun. Last week, we spent some time with Reggie Mobley, and this week, we're really excited to have tenor, artist manager, and producer Scott MELLO, who has been part of the BCSD family going back to about 2011, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in just a moment. And the concert we just heard was just a few years ago. I'd say probably like 4 seasons ago. We did a program called Welcome to Leipzig, where we did a series of Bach cantatas, and that was great, great fun. And I think Scott is, oh, he's back. There we go. Very
was
good.
I missing?
There you go. Scott, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine. You're in New York today, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And for those of you who wonder, I'm in San Diego, and Scott is in New York. And how have things been going for you?
For the most part, things have been okay. It's
Yeah.
it's a challenging time, and it's hard to be in New York City, but you just stay vigilant and responsible and do the best that you can in the present moment. Get outside when you can.
Right, right. And it's going to be interesting talking to Scott today, because Scott straddles a number of and wears a number of different hats. Not only is he a professional tenor in New York City and wherever else he can travel to, but also is in the business of artist management and also producing. And of course, right now, this being a very unique time, it's quite a unique time to be doing all three of those things. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But I always think it's interesting for folks, when we see you at a concert, your bio doesn't always tell the full story. It certainly tells about your professional career. But I think it's interesting for folks to understand and know how your formative years and how you came to find music. Can you give us a sort of a summation of how you found music and singing?
Sure. Yeah, the Reader's Digest version. I think the easiest way to kind of come to music is have it part of your childhood. And that was certainly the case for me. My parents are both music educators, choral conductors. My dad is the choir master at the Episcopal Church in the town I grew up in. And my mom is a children's choir specialist. So I sang in both of their choirs in a variety of ways growing up. And I think when I told them in the beginning of high school that I wanted to go into music, they were horrified.
Oh, no.
They were like, please be a doctor, please be a lawyer. And I was like, no, this is your fault. So yeah, and so that's how I kind of came to music, was that it was very much part of my growing up. And when my parents sang professionally in New York and when they were younger and all of the things that they did, I was always there. So.
Right, right. And of course, I think you've mentioned this week, your parents are still very musically active. They continue to do music professionally, correct?
Yeah, that's true. My dad has been the choir master of Christ Episcopal Church in Newton, New Jersey since 1979. and my mom does the youth choirs there, but she also has a children's choir in town, and she teaches at Montclair State University on the choral faculty and music education faculty with Heather Buchanan.
Right. I mean, there was no chance of you becoming a lawyer or a doctor.
No. I didn't know what they were thinking.
Yeah. So, right. So it was just like the transition of you just growing up in it, and then obviously at some point you grew up singing in choirs. And at what point did you say, you know what, I think I'm going to, not only do I do music, but I'm going to make this a career? Was there like a crystallized moment where it's like, this is what I want to do?
I'm always curious to hear when people answer this kind of question, because for me, it was inevitable. Like as a boy soprano, that was what I did. I sang a All in the Night Visitors. I did children's choirs. I did kind of some orchestral solo things, the Snowman and the Andrew Lloyd Webber, and any number of things that boy sopranos do. And that for me was like, well, this is what I do. This is kind of inextricably linked to who I am as a person. So when I said like, these are the colleges I want to look at for music, and I got a little bit of pushback, I was surprised. Like this is kind of, there's no question to me. So it's less of, it less occurred to me as like, oh, this will be my career. Yeah. As it was more like kind of deeply connected and rooted to who I was, and that it was more of a calling.
Got it. Yeah. That's interesting, because I try to ask this question every week, and it's interesting how people answer this, because for some, I mean, they've come to music quite late, which is always interesting to me to discover that in that way. And others, like yourself, I mean, you literally were immersed in it from day one. Yeah. So it's just a seamless transition into making it a career and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
I will say though that like even when you were talking to Reggie, surprising about how he came to music, I always learn from people who came to music a little bit later, because they see, hear, and appreciate things that I may have taken for granted growing up in such a musical household. And I feel like I learned the most from people who started to process that great love later in life and came to it as a more fully formed human being. Because I think when it's just kind of part of your DNA and you grow up with it, there are many things you can kind of take for granted, or just perspectives that you can't see, that you learn from other people who come to it later. Right.
That's the old conversation of nature versus nurture, and how those two relate to each other. That's, very interesting. So now we fast forward. We're going to fast forward to I actually can pinpoint the day that we met. I knew of you via my wife, Anne Marie DJ. And then it was 2010, and I went off, we both went off to the ABS. It was the inaugural academy.
The very first
one. And I find myself at that, and she says, whatever you do, try to look up this guy, Scott MELLO. And I don't remember had she met you before somewhere, or how did you guys connect?
No, we actually hadn't met. I can't remember whether we knew each other we knew of each other through other people because of what is now the JSB ensemble, which was Festival Ensemble Stuttgart. Right. And I had done that with Rilling. So we knew a lot of similar people, and we had many people in common. And then I think that's how we connected. But we didn't actually, Anne-Marie and you and I met first in person, because Anne-Marie and I met when she came up to San Francisco to visit you.
Right. And speaking of which, that Stuttgart program, the JSB thing, I mean, that must have been an incredible, over those years that program was going strong. There are so many people that connected at that point that still remain connected. It's unbelievable.
Incredible program. And it's morphed over the years, but it still has the same spirit, I think. I think people would say that. I didn't experience it as the JSB ensemble, but I think anyone who can participate in that even once, it's totally worth your time.
Right. So the other thing that's unique about that time we met, so anyway, so I had it in my mind, I got to look up, and I think you were introduced in the room, and there's Scott MELLO. And then I didn't actually have the opportunity to actually introduce myself. We were literally at a lunch buffet at some eatery in San Francisco, and I was literally grabbing a big old turkey leg, and you were next to me. And I think that is at the moment when I said, oh, hi, I'm Ruben, and hi, I'm Scott, and where we met. And I think shortly thereafter, here's another fun fact about that time. I was about to propose to Anne Marie, and I think I disclosed to you at some point during that week that, oh my God, when I get back from this festival thing, I'm going to propose to Anne Marie back in San Diego.
Yep.
So you were one of the first to know that information during that time. But that was quite a I think it was a two week.
Yeah, we were there for 2 weeks.
Yeah, we were there, of course, with the two big works with B minor Mass, which I think they still do every year, and Resurrectione was the other one.
Right.
Was the other one, and besides meeting you at the turkey at a turkey leg over a turkey leg, my other incredible memory of that time, I stayed in the hotel where they put us in. I think you had the advantage of staying. Did you say David Kurtenbach or something?
Yeah, actually, I think David. I can't remember whether he was out of town for part of the time, but I was staying at his apartment.
Okay.
David and we've known each other since we were in college.
Oh, okay. So I was in the hotel like a block away from the conservatory, and I'll never forget just leaving my little dorm room one morning and seeing basically a naked Max von Egmond walking out of the shower as he was just wrapping up there. And I thought to myself, this man literally made me love a lot of those bass cantatas, and there he is now walking right by me, you know. And I thought, my God, this is after all, this is our Dutch naked man show of records. So I had to drop that. So that was. So then we fast forward. I think at that moment I said, well, look, we have to get you involved with BCSD somehow. We have to get you out. And then I was in the process of planning for an opera, which was Purcell's Dido Nines, which still to the present is the one and only time we've done an opera. That's been under the BCSD sort of umbrella. And I said, oh, Scott, can you come out and do that? And you're like, yes, I would love to. So you want to fill in some blanks there after that?
Sure. Well, it should be said first and foremost that while I am a tenor, I'm a slightly lower set tenor, and I'm sure Anne Marie will have lots to say about that. But the reality is that I discovered that this was the one and only time I would sing Aeneas because it is actually too low for me. So I was very happy to come do it, and it was a good test run to figure out that I should never sing that role again, and it should be left to honest to God baritones and bass baritones. But it was an adventure, and what I distinctly remember is being super excited, also because Michael Sponseller and I have been close since college, and I was happy to be there with him as well, and how you two are connected, which I think might be also how you knew to look me up at ABS.
Yes, I think he, because I met Michael back in 2007, so I remember your name coming up over and over again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I got to San Diego, and I got picked up, and I was brought to your house, and your old house, not your new house. And I remember leaning in the kitchen on the counter, and you're like, so there's no more director. The director's gone. And I was like, what is happening? and you said, maybe Michael suggested maybe you could also maybe help out with maybe some of the staging. It's not going to be hard. And
Scott's very capable. He can do it. He can do it. But here's the funny thing about that is that we lost our director, and I won't go into the details surrounding that. But it was literally in the weekend leading to the first rehearsal that would have started on, say, Sunday night. It was like a Friday, and suddenly we had no director. And I remember I told Michael this, and you were about to get on a flight, and he said to me distinctly, he's like, whatever you do not tell Scott what has happened, that we don't have a director, because if you do, he will get back on the plane and just stay at home. He will not come. And so I just kept my mouth shut. And as you know, I didn't disclose this, a very important piece of information until you were here firmly in San Diego.
And I think I had that, which is pretty typical of me. I had that complete moment of panic, which I'm sure Michael predicted. I had a complete moment of panic. And then I was like, can I see the stage dimensions in the set sketch? so that I know what we're dealing with.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but we really don't have much to work with. Yeah, it was kind of sketchy, but it turned out okay. I remember we had a good time. It was in a school auditorium in Rancho Santa Fe here.
That's right.
Yeah, which actually, the way I justified it in my mind that we were sort of doing something more or less historically informed was that I think Purcell performed it himself in a school, basically what amounted to a school gym or auditorium of sorts. So I thought, okay, well, we're in good company and we can do this. And it turned out okay.
Yeah.
Now
it was a great introduction to BCSD.
Yes, and the fact that we've not done another opera maybe says something about that experience.
Opera's hard, man.
It is hard, man. It is hard. So wonderful. Yeah. Well, from that point going forward, I mean, you were part of, I think, was it there was a significant B minor mass we did in 2014, 13.
Yeah, the one we recorded.
That's right.
Yep.
You were on that. You were one of our soloists for that. And I got in numerous other things, some Purcell projects. I think we did some Purcell odes that you sang on.
Monteverdi Vespers.
That's right. Monteverdi Vespers. I forgot about that. Yes, we were doing it's kind of crazy now to think of just life moving normally, of, okay, there's a season and you do it. And of course you have obstacles.
Right.
And now it's just like, oh my gosh, like the things I took for granted.
It's why I'm drinking my coffee out of a Groundhog Day mug, because I just feel like I'm repeating the same day over and over again.
Aha, very good. Yes. Gary Payne is watching today, and he says,
hey, Gary.
The first time he saw BCSD, and of course, many of you know that Gary is very much connected to BCSD as its board president, and he takes all those wonderful photographs and so forth, among many things. His first time experiencing BCSD was at Dido. He came to that performance in Rancho Santa Fe, and that was, he said, the first time. So gosh, it's amazing to think that. So that
almost 10 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's in some ways it seems like a week ago. In other ways, a lot has changed, of course. So that leads us to another part of the discussion that I wanted to get into, because I said at the top of the interview, you sort of wear many hats, and wearing those many hats right now is got to be crazy and stressful. And that is, not only are you an active professional singer, but you're also doing artist management and doing producing. How, under normal circumstances, that is, in my opinion, a very stressful venture. So how has it looked in the present, post-pandemic? How does this all work?
Well, I don't think we can say post-pandemic, honestly.
Right. That is true.
We're in the muck of it, and we're all learning how to move forward. And I think that the biggest thing that is the driving force right now is that culture matters. How we engage with the art of our society is of the utmost importance. And so that's why we have to just move ahead and look at things with fresh eyes and new angles and figure out how to keep things moving along. That being said, I don't know about you, but I'm quite tired of constant Zoom engagement and all of that. This is not that per se, but interviews and talks, that's fine. But music making over this medium is really challenging. And I think that's because the live aspect, what we're all realizing, is the magic ingredient to concertizing, and that making music with people in this distanced way is hard and problematic. And also it belies what quality is, and authenticity. So I think that those are the challenges, like the overarching challenges that we're seeing. And then in terms of being inventive about how we produce art and how presenting organizations are engaging with artists, and what that means to the artist's brand and what that means to the presenter's brand, and how those things are leveraged in mutual agreement and in a mutually beneficial way, is something that it continues to be a robust conversation. I try not to look at it from the really hard work that I'm doing right now is kind of canceling all the work I've done for the last year and a half.
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of it as retooling those things and how they can not just be postponed, but how we can stay engaged with the art and the artists in a really creative, dynamic way.
You know, the thing is, I don't know about you, but when you said, you know, about being completely exhausted about the whole virtual aspect of trying to stay connected, I mean, even into the second month of being completely shut down, even going into the third month, I felt like personally, I think we can do this. We can sort of sustain this current thing until we can get back to it. But, you know, at least where I am, there has been a bit of a surge again, and it's just a little daunting to think, like, how long can musicians, artists sustain this being apart and not get back to the sacred aspect of being in person live? It's a tricky thing, and exhausting, frankly. I mean, just the very nature of, you know, like being on a Zoom call, I find that not being able to see like most of somebody's body, like their body language, and all you see is like their talking head. There's so much you miss about what is really happening in a conversation that it's exhausting. So,
yeah.
You know,
it's
what I mean?
hard to focus. It's hard to focus on all of that in this very narrow window medium. I mean that both in a figurative and literal sense. But it's challenging, to say the least.
Right.
And I don't know if I can predict past this, because I still feel like we're in it. We need to gather as much information as possible to figure out how we can effectively move ahead in the coming months and, frankly, years, and how this will look on the other side. Yeah.
How is I know New York was definitely a hot spot. How are things at the moment there?
At the moment, it seems to be okay, because, you know, New Yorkers, on the whole, I think that the feeling is that New Yorkers are like, I'm going to do whatever I want, and, you know, my business is my business, and you stay over there. And I think New Yorkers are actually really community based and super vigilant about taking care of what needs to be taken care of. It might be in a blunt way and not as genteel as the South or as hip as the West Coast, but I think that people are just really caring about each other. And so everyone's wearing masks, and everyone's being really respectful and socially responsible.
Right. I did see somewhere, and I think you mentioned it also, that in terms of like church positions and church gigs, there is some music now happening on a small scale in some of the New York churches. Is that right?
For sure. I mean, I think the New York churches are doing their best to stay engaged. And so I sing at Trinity Wall Street, which, you know, with Julian Wachner and the great choir of Trinity Wall Street. And we have kind of been laying low for the time being, but we did just start figuring out how to rotate trios and quartets into the Sunday service starting this past Sunday on the 5th.
Okay.
So we just kind of, based on our availability, we're all kind of participating in a socially distanced way, singing with masks on, and socially distanced, physically distanced, I should say, in the church.
Right.
Which makes it difficult. It tests your ability to turn your ears off and just watch Julian or whoever's leading the service musically, to connect and make music in a responsible way. And we're just starting, so we'll see how it goes. And I think I'm singing actually this upcoming Sunday on the 12th. So I'm excited just to get back to like having vibratory sounds move through my body. Honestly, like that in and of itself will be super gratifying.
Yeah. So going back to your work as a artist in artist management and producing, when and Opus 3, correct?
Opus 3 artists.
Opus 3 artists, yeah. So when you guys, let's for a moment think normal circumstances. There is no, historic pandemic that we're living through. What do you guys look for when you are choosing artists for your roster? What do you guys look for? What are the traits?
Yeah. So actually, I'm just going to start with a quick history lesson. Okay. And that is, so the grandfather of artist management in this country was a man named Saul Hurok, Hurok, who had a long career from the 20s until the 70s, and built an extraordinary roster with many singers that you might know, Victoria de Los Angeles, and he worked with Rostropovich, and he discovered Yo-Yo Ma.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that roster, then when he decided to move on with his life, because he'd done it for 50 years, ICM Partners, which is the big management conglomerate, got into the high culture game and created ICM Artists. And then ICM Artists was like, I think I'm approximating 70s until the early 21st century. And then it evolved out of ICM to become Opus 3 Artists. And that's why it's called Opus 3, because it's the third iteration of a company that started in the 1920s.
Oh, okay. Did not know that. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is a very prominent roster in the classical music and high culture world. It's Yo-Yo Ma and Emmanuel Axe and Yefim Bronfman and Patti LuPone and Alvin Ailey Dance Company. And it runs the gamut from touring ensembles to classical soloists to opera.
Yeah.
And some touring attractions on the kind of commercial side of things.
Got it. Our good friend David Kurtenbach is joined us here. He's watching, and he's remarking upon your tropical theme, the shirt and the fabric. So, hi, David. Good to see you.
I'm trying to feel like it's actually summer, and we're not dying of East Coast humidity and longing for the beach, which I won't go to because people are irresponsible.
You know what's interesting, Scott, that if you look, when I last saw you in person, I think it was the very tail end of February. You'll remember that I was in New York City to do that thing with New York Holy Trinity Bach Vespers, and we went and did it. You took me to an Opus 3 event. It was the violinist. I forget his name. It was a Bach, among other things. Do you remember that?
It was Alexi Quinny.
Yeah. And we went to that wonderful, what did we eat?
It was at 92nd Street Y.
Yes. And then preceded, of course, by the that wonderful dinner we had at that sort of walk-up
that place was great. That place was super great. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, but what's crazy about that is that at least, that was right on the cusp of things shutting down.
You're right.
I certainly had no sense on February 22, 23 that the world was about to change. Certainly didn't. And yet here we are, all that. But that was literally the last time I saw you in person, and it was for an Opus 3.
Truly the before times. Also, it does speak to how we met, because I am always in my best mood around food.
Yeah, I hear you. That was that was the last time I traveled. That was my last travel, was end of February. But so going back to the question, what do you guys look for?
Sure. So I think that every manager is different, and I've evolved into being an artist manager at Opus 3. I didn't start there. I just started as a booking agent. So now I do have my own roster of artists that I work with, and I would say, I don't want to speak for other people. We do sometimes do things by committee, like we talk about people that we might sign to the roster for a variety of reasons. But I think I can only speak for myself. And that is, for me, I look for artists that dial into a really performative, curative, programmatic space. And so for me, when I'm looking for artists and my roster runs the gamut, it's really people who transcend their medium, transcend their genre, and transcend their instrument.
Yeah.
And have something super authentic and unique to tell the world through the specific medium that they offer, right?
Right.
And so I think, was it Pablo Casals that said he was a human first, a musician second, and a cellist last. Right? I may be reversing the order there, but the idea is that we can operate through that particular lens, is how I try to engage with what our artists bring to the table and whether I am a good fit for them and vice versa. So some of the artists that I work with directly on my roster, which might be super familiar to the BCSD audience, are Voces 8, who are currently due to come to San Diego on Alex's series at St. James next spring, but we'll see. And also Chanticleer is a client that I work with now directly for their touring. And then soloists, I work with the tenor Karim Suleiman, who is well known in the Baroque circles, especially because he won the Grammy Award for his solo album in 2019.
Yeah. Speaking of Karim, I just heard a recording, and I forgot where I came across it. It was, I think, didn't he just record a disc of Schubert or Lieder, and it was him doing Erlkönig that absolutely blew my face off. And I have got to get my hands on that recording because
it's out now. It's a beautiful Schubert disc on a gorgeous period piano.
Right.
It's a beautiful disc. And it also is what's interesting about that disc for Karim, I think, if I can just hawk my wares for a second, is that Karim really has developed using existing Schubert songs a new cycle in the style of Müller or Winterreise, but with a narrative of that we are not alone in the world. John Russell's asking what singer? Karim, Karim Suleiman, Sulayman, a Lebanese American tenor based in Chicago, and he's extraordinary in every way. And I would say that for me, the draw I have to him and why I think that he and I are simpatico and can do good work together is because he transcends being just a tenor. He's a real thinker and artist and has a real sense of what his programmatic goals and how he wants to speak to the world. And so then that's just, everyone should listen to that disc. But the Grammy Award winning disc is actually an Italian Baroque disc that everyone should check out with Apollo's Fire.
Got it. Yeah, that's where I first kind of his name came to my attention was via that recording. Scott knows this, and so this is part of a little bit of real life here. I'm actually doing this interview from my garage, and one of my neighbors has just waved at me, so I need to wave back because lest they think that I'm ignoring them. But anyway, we go on. Oh my gosh, Nell Snadas is watching. Oh, Nell. No, David, this is not my junk. Well, it is my junk room. I've been relegated in the new house. I'm relegated to the garage. No longer do I have a room, but I shall arise like the phoenix. I'm going to finish out the garage at some point, and it'll be a proper room. But now, since we are obviously, Scott, we're not in normal time. How is Opus 3 literally managing this current situation? Like, how does this work?
We are stalwart. we're doing it. It's it's going to be hard for everybody in this industry, no matter what spoke on the wheel you are. It's going to be a challenge, and I think we all just have to be creative and figure out how to move forward and how to be creative about that. I don't know how to say it other than that, except that we have artists that we are responsible for, and we're doing our very best to keep things going. Exactly.
And I think we're all hoping that things will start to trend in a better direction, hopefully in the next few months, and that we can, when we look back on this 2020, my goodness, I think we were all just kind of coasting along in February, and suddenly the rug got pulled out. Never knew that would have happened. But other interesting question that I think pertains to artist management and representation, all that sort of thing, is being a musician. I've always had this thing in my mind that if you're going to really be taken seriously in what you do, you have got to spend some time and do some work in New York City. You have to immerse yourself in that environment. How do you feel about that? Is there some truth to that, or does it matter anymore?
I don't know. I feel like we live in much more of a global society. New York would certainly love to believe that it is the epicenter of all, and the world revolves around New York, especially in the high culture performing arts world. But I also I think BCSD is a great example. Like, I knew you, and I was really happy to come introduce myself to your audience and to be part of that band and the work that you do initially. But it was mostly like, wow, there's just really good Baroque playing happening in San Diego. And that's something that I've experienced across the board, across genre. in my artist management work, when I've had to go to symphony orchestras and other things that I wouldn't have seen necessarily in my professional life as a tenor, given the repertoire that I sang, but like going to hear the Cincinnati Symphony, what a great orchestra, the Minnesota Orchestra, what an incredible orchestra. And that is my surprise across the board. And going to other venues and hearing recitals and chamber music concerts, I'm just constantly amazed at how there's so much fantastic art that exists outside of, frankly, my little tiny world of New York City. And I think a good example is one of my artists that I work with is a violinist named Blake Pouliot, Pouliot. He is French-Canadian, sort of. He says the T at the end, but he's from Toronto.
Yeah.
Lives in Los Angeles because he went to the Colburn School.
Oh, okay. All right.
And studied with Lipset, and he's kind of stayed in LA, and he's got a really like bold soloist career going right now, and he doesn't live in New York.
Okay.
So I think that that has shifted over time. I'm not sure it's absolutely necessary. Obviously, you want to get to the point where you're being part of the New York scene in some way, but I'm not sure you need to live there. And I think you're doing that when you come and guest conduct for Holy Trinity, and it's possible for people to not live in New York but still be part of the scene in some way.
And what I love about that so much is that you can go and do something in an incredible place like New York City, walk out from that project, whatever it is, you walk like 25 feet and there's like another amazing project happening.
Yeah.
It's some other, I mean, this is what I really pine for. You know what I mean? But obviously there are some challenges with living in a city like New York City, obviously.
Yeah. And the grass is always greener, right? I mean, like sometimes I take that for granted that you can walk around a corner and find another amazing concert or project happening. And but it's also, you get saturated and you do everything. I don't get to nearly even, I would say 25% of the concerts I actually want to go to because there's just not enough time. And at some point you have to like live your life. You can't be in concerts all day, every day.
Right. I used to joke with Michael Sponseller that in referring to Boston, I'm like, gosh, it feels to me like there's like a world-class harpsichord like every half block in your city. Like, you know, here I am trying to find a decent instrument to practice on, and you've got one. It seems to me like Boston is just saturated in you know, things, early music, among other things, of course.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the grass is greener indeed. And well, you know what lies just a few miles from here. There's a beautiful beach here, but we can't go to at the moment. But alas, at some point we will. So let's see. Other questions for you, because you wear all these hats. Is there something that you prefer? Like, if you had to pick one, what do you prefer to do most? Like, all of them, one of them, different reasons? Like,
that's a hard question. I think actually I can't actually narrow it into preference for one or the other, because otherwise I wouldn't do all of these things, right?
Right.
I can't really say. I think I do say to some people now, like, I'm not really a singer anymore, but that's not actually true. That's just a time issue, because I can't do everything at once. But I'll always be a singer, but it's just not the thing I do primarily as much anymore. But I think I wouldn't have become an artist manager or a producer or curator of concerts or artistic consultant in any way if I wasn't a musician first, and that was kind of brought to life through my singing. Yeah. But I think that my life, we are some of our parts, right? We are the sum of our parts, and those parts all make up part of who I am. And I don't think I would be successful at having those programmatic conversations, those artistic conversations, and booking concerts and negotiating contracts and doing that work for my artists if I hadn't gone through that myself, and if that wasn't part of my journey. And figuring out what your priorities are, figuring out what your ethics and morals are around this particular industry, I think it's all informed by every step I've taken. So I can't really say that I like one more than the other, because I still love all of these things. And there's some little piece of each other thing as a singer or a producer or a consultant or an artist manager. There's one piece of each of those things in everything that I do. Right.
Would you say the current state of affairs as really will redefine the ethics surrounding contracts and contracting of artists?
Yeah, listen, I mean, a contract in my mind is a living document. It is to benefit both parties, and it should be something that is revisited if it's necessary to revisit it. I do think that the ethics surrounding force majeure should be revisited, because it's, frankly, in this situation, what we've discovered is it's actually not even mutually protective.
Yeah.
It's just, it causes some serious problems. And I think we do have to think about, if we're going to talk in this country about living wages and equity of pay between peoples, we have to have those conversations starting at the contractual level, and how those things are, how those discussions are formulated into a document, a living document that protects everybody as best as it can.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm going to be very interested to see what changes come out of this current situation, because, you know, the whole arts world has been thrown into upheaval over this.
Yeah.
It'll be.
It's a real reckoning. It's a real reckoning on the current system.
Right.
And I think but we are a very delicate ecosystem. And so I think there's been a lot of conversation about how certain aspects of the industry, like, I don't respond well to the full idea of, like, well, that person isn't doing what I believe is right, so they should be canceled. Yeah. And I think that it's a delicate ecosystem that we have to, that each part is important. The presenter, the manager, the artists specifically, and all of the subsets around each of those three categories are super necessary. Right. And that list is very long, myriad, and how the ripple effect to the greater economy of any locale is affected by this shift. So there's a lot to consider.
Right. So, Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot now. You ready?
Oh, you haven't already?
Yeah.
Using my words carefully.
You have it'll be a very pointed, specific question. Do you have, like, just in the Baroque idiom, favorite singers? Just favorite singers?
Yeah, I definitely live more in the old school.
Okay.
Because I think, for me, the singers that still literally ring in my ear when I hear when we're talking about a specific piece, a Bach cantata, a Handel oratorio, Anthony Rolfe Johnson is really, like, for me, just, there's a combination of stylistic elegance, but also honoring the sound and past of the singing world. Yeah. His rhetoric, the way that he engages with tone color, that for me is, and I also think I will acknowledge the other side of the fence, that is, like, we sometimes gravitate towards the things that we can see ourselves in, real mirror moments. And, my tone quality is not typical of a Bach tenor. Mm-hmm. So there are really, and I think Michael would say, and actually Michael Sponzeller, I credit for really introducing me to understanding how cantatas can really, there are only certain cantatas that are going to work for my particular type of voice. And that the Bach tenor is actually a myth, right? Because the cantatas and the oratorios that we have from that great composer vary so much in terms of tessitura and the tenor arias, that you really have to think about different tone colors and qualities and weight of voice, etc. So Anthony Rolfe is certainly one of my great ones. John Mark Ainsley, I will say I don't like how he sings Bach, but for Handel, for sure, is where I live. And if I was to call out a tenor of the modern era for me in this repertoire, it's Aaron Sheehan, friend of BCSD. But I mean, there is just an effortlessness and attention to rhetoric and detail that I really admire in him. Right.
And Aaron just got a new pup, I saw somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is getting their COVID puppy, and I'm super jealous. I can't have a dog in my building, but. Oh,
yeah. So let's see, somebody has asked, again, this is like not a fair question, but these are kind of fun. Do you have literally a fave recording? Why don't we narrow it down to Baroque again? Just a fate. I mean, I certainly have like boom. You know, do you have one that just jumps out at you?
You know, the thing is I feel like I used to be a real recording buff.
Yeah.
And I definitely have moved away from that because I see so many live concerts that it's hard for, I also have really strong feelings about listening. So I don't listen to things casually. I have to sit down and take the time to listen to it. So that being said, the Minkowski, the Minkowski Ariodante recording with on Sophie von Otter, I think is maybe one of the most glorious things ever.
Right.
And I do think that JEG Gardner recordings really live up there for me, and across the board. I mean, even from early days. But the more recent recording of the Bach motets, I think, is astounding.
Right.
And that really lives up there for me. And also the Bill Christie recording of Alcina, I think, is one of my all-time faves.
Okay. And then last question. If of the major Bach works, what is your favorite?
St. John Passion.
Okay, good.
And I'll say that because I recognize what the robust conversation is around the setting and language of that piece. I like that it's controversial and we can have a productive dialogue. And I just think that the piece is extraordinary. Yeah.
Well, Scott, I can't thank you enough for taking time today to talk to us about I love that word gamut. Whenever I think gamut, I literally think of the gamut, anyway, I don't want to know that. But taking some time to talk to us not only about your musical origins, how we met over the buffet in San Francisco, we even referenced a naked Max von Egmond along the way. Your work as a producer, artist manager, and professional tenor. And our good friend David Kurtenbach wants everyone to know that I really do need to stake my claim for the junk room, and that this library that you see behind me, I told Scott that if I were to pan in any direction 10 feet, with some paint cans, pesticides, shovels, brooms, but it will at some point become the Healy William Memorial Library in my garage. I will christen it so. I will hire 2 thurifers, and we will sing a glorious Te Deum in the garage to christen it, and away we go. So
you're like a dog with a bone, Valenzuela.
Scott, thank you so much, and please stay healthy. Please stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you in the flesh at some point.
Yeah, same to you and your beautiful family, and also all the BCSD family. I miss you guys and love you, and thanks for chatting today.
All right, thanks, Scott. Take care.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.